The most dangerous creatures the world has ever known are the God-fearing, Bible-pounding, fire and brimstone fundamentalist Christians, inasmuch as such creatures have gorged themselves upon the psychosis-inducing fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The conditioned mind of those who adhere to Christendom is a dark tomb overflowing with the dogma of despotic clericalism. Its collective Christian body is a shroud which barely conceals the centuries of mental effluvium and decadent sophistry. The widespread wasteland of Christendom is an ever-widening cemetery full of murdered victims and dead issues. Inasmuch as Christianity has been in continuous conflict since its inception, it is obvious that the easily gulled adherents do not know the truth that frees the soul from the bondage of mammon. Mind is the all-knowing, all-powerful, everywhere-present alchemist which converts the four elements of earth, water, fire, and air into the land, ocean, sun, and sky that forms our planet, solar systems, galaxies, universes, and all of the cosmos. Even the early pre-Bible Gnostics said, "Do not be a Christian, become a Christ," because all Christians from the very inception of their structured dogma were just a new brand of scribe and Pharisee who adhered to the dead letter. Whoever achieves gnosis becomes an enlightened Christ, without the need for wading through the Christian tombs of irrelevant gospel. The early Catholic Church condemned gnosis as heresy and murdered the Gnostics because they refused to recognize the bishops, priests, creeds, canons, and foolish ritual of the Church as bearing any authority over the Christ teachings, which is the true knowledge of the heart known as gnosis cardius. The Roman Catholic Church, from its very beginning, was a political organization of despotic clericalism with undue influence upon the state in controlling the masses. You can forget about the Father God in a distant heaven, forget about the fallen devil in a not-so-distant hell, forget about good, forget about evil, forget about right, forget about wrong, forget about past, forget about future, by simply forgetting about the false doctrine of dualism. All of this and much, much more is the great and crucial conflict within our relative conditioned minds, which has been programmed by the out-of-order established order. If you adhere to the out-of-order established order or any branch of it, you are the guilty victims of false doctrines that conclude through assumption, which makes you a slave to conjecture. You can be free from the degenerating pain of selfish desires, from a psychological dependency upon chronological time, and from the mental confusion of conceptualized duality, while enjoying the ultimate in liberation. This is all possible through the simple realization that mind is the solitary creator, all that is created, and the totality of creation, thereby forming a single interrelated cosmic event. If you are deceived by the limitation of your five senses, you shall remain ignorant of the truth that frees your mind from all the credulous theories based upon the findings of misinformed academics who are limited by their normal emotional intellects. The creative principle intelligence power of the universal mind is everywhere except in books, holy or otherwise. If society were to replace its Board of Education with the methodology of meditation, it would become a community of consecrated individuals devoted to the truth of being for the betterment of mankind. If meditation is correctly practiced, the infallible intuition will be activated, and the divine tuition within the receptive heart of the initiate shall be actuated. Only by way of determination and concentrated effort in a suitable form of meditation can the open mind and receptive heart of another unrestricted individuality become enlightened with the will of cosmic reason, which is ever flowing from out of the universal mind as cosmic consciousness. This reading is from the Academy of Self series by Gordon Gardner. The title of this is The Impersonal Source Consciousness of the Cosmos. It is a non-theistic look at ultimate reality. The higher self of each human is a dynamic, holistic, energetic progeny from out of the universal progenitor, which is an impersonal, evolutionary, primordial consciousness that is all-pervading and everlasting. Inasmuch as it is without gender, it shouldn't be thought of as either mother or father. Although being androgynous, it does contain the yin feminine and the yang masculine energies. It is an absolute, abstract, and abstruse solitary source, since it is invincible, not material, ineffable, and without second. As the absolute consciousness of the cosmos, it is the observer, the observed, and the observation, and that all three are a single, interrelated cosmic event within itself. Even though this source has no actual being, it is the solitary progenitor of all beings and all of existence. Therefore, every creature, every thing, every human being is a singular issue, which is undifferentiated in essence from this one source. In other words, all beings, human and otherwise, and all of existent things are the identical nature of, with the same qualities as, this absolute, abstract, abstruse source. Simply put, there is an all-pervading interconnectedness between the solitary source consciousness and every singular issue awareness. This means that the one and the many are coinciding at all points in unrestricted coordination between a source consciousness and an issue awareness, inasmuch as the one implies the many in a perpetual reciprocation of complementary qualities. As strange as it may seem to say, even in this extremely innovative time on our endless journey, the single interrelated cosmic event as a boundless, interminable ordered universe is qualitative in its nature and not quantitative, as it seems to be according to our common sense viewpoint. Those of us who have had some experience with encountering cosmic consciousness, although unexpectedly, examine our cognitive powers through introspection. Then, through the coordination of our separate awareness as a singular issue, attuned to the inseparable consciousness of the solitary source, our common sense view is transformed into an uncommon sense panorama of other dimensions of existence which we could never imagine prior to enlightenment. The full realization that there is one that has all power, knows all that there is to know, and which is an everywhere present presence, deflates the ego self with its restricted personality right out of existence, not that it ever had any real reality of its own in the first place. The ultimate recognition of absolute unification of the one and the many brings with it the complete realization that all of the theological nomenclature is not in any way relevant to this ultimate reality, actualization. In other words, the terms Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Allah, Krishna, Jehovah, and many others are futile attempts to define and personalize that which is undefinable and impersonal. If any of the words antagonistic religions had any real and lasting value, the many forms of psychiatry wouldn't have developed. And if psychiatry was of any real benefit, the insane asylums wouldn't be bursting at the seams with the victims of religiosity. The false piety of churchianity has drove its weak-willed adherents into all sorts of neurotic and psychotic behavior, which the dictatorial church, with its mediating clerics, priests, and rabbis, attempt to modify through a fear God, feel guilt, hate the unbeliever method of authoritarian rule. Most of the human beings who are the natural habitants of planet Earth have been denaturalized by the out-of-order established order in the form of the church, state, science, medical, and psychiatric behavior modification tactics. The natural spiritual rhythm of human beings has been tampered with long enough by these self-appointed puppet masters. But of course the puppet masses are their guilty victims for not saying enough of your behavior modifying, mind mesmerizing, spirit manipulating, and psyche contaminating plague, we are taking charge of our lives because we are the progeny of the living universe and have a right to our unrestricted individuality. For all unrestricted individualities, the clues are in. The riddle is solved. The quest is over. Equality is established. Individuality is substantiated. Spontaneity is attained. Freedom is granted. And peace of mind has been bestowed. Sound reasoning and sane doubts will prevent the aware mind from adhering to any of the credulous nonsense which is propagated with such emotional fervor and intellectual logic by the out-of-order established order. The age of blind faith, vapid hope, and loveless charity is past, and we are now entering a new age of light, where only love can fulfill, only wisdom can secure, and only truth can free the undaunted seeker. Seekers have found that by keeping the mind empty of self in the here now, while upholding an absolute trust in the all-knowing higher self, they can bask in the heartfelt love of the one for the many, and then by returning it wholeheartedly to all of life, they can easily preserve a real peace of mind. It is through the guilelessness of wisdom that integrity is developed, and real peace of mind is upheld, whereas it is through the guilt of knowledge that conscience is imposed and all freedom is forsaken. Children of parents who walk in wisdom have no need for a vacillating, ineffectual conscience, inasmuch as their inborn integrity will keep them fulfilled, secured, and free from all doubt as to their real identity. Such conscience-free children become mature adults who express enthusiastic feelings and optimistic thoughts with courageous resolve, the result being exemplary actions as they too walk in wisdom. Conscience is a weak, ineffectual guard on the not too tightly closed door of the psyche that has been contaminated by parental and social mores based on the false doctrine of dualism, which is sanctioned by the out-of-order established order. The conflict between the limitation of good and the ignorance of evil is the sickness of a vacillating conscience within a mind that lacks integrity, and therefore its ability for creative expression. A conscience is the result of enforced repression, which produces depression because of the fear of not being allowed expression. Repression turns the psyche into a septic container of mental effluvium which must one day explode into manic and often depraved behavior because of the soul-searing pain of a coerced depression inflicted upon the children of delinquent parents who are the victims, in turn, of an offensive society. The offensive society, of course, being the out-of-order established order of church, state, science, medical, psychiatric authoritarianism. It is the foolish ignorance of a society-imposed conscience which places a leash upon the accumulation of mental refuse until the mind is no longer capable of containing the pressure. Then a manic and often psychotic behavior bursts the seams of the overburdened psyche. The guilt of knowledge within a burdened conscience is a poor replacement for the guilelessness of an inborn integrity. Inasmuch as integral persons listen to their inborn integrity, living the holistic life for them is a loving encounter with each moment of time, when every breath breathed is an affirmation of joy, and every affirmation is a declaration of independence. Listening to the inborn integrity requires that we humans live, move, and preserve our beings where and when the boundless here intersects the interminable now. Living in the here now is living carefree, while never having to chance a choice in the midst of change. And since all there is change, freedom of choice is bondage to chance. We all know that within the tiny acorn is a mighty oak tree, at least in the blueprint stage. And it is doubtlessly true that all an acorn needs is to be appropriately planted and equitably nurtured. Then it shall become the mighty oak, inasmuch as the acorn is complete within itself. If newborn babes were equitably nurtured, they too would develop into mighty human beings, because of their inborn integrity. Those who don't become at least great have been tampered with by fools for parents who obey a society of bigger fools. A fool is a credulous creature who would attempt to grow an elm tree out of an acorn, and such fools pervert the natural growth of the children they have been blessed with. It is because most parents are as weak and as brittle as an elm tree that they pervert the natural process of babies right from birth with their insane, reactive, conditioned minds. And unless these victimized children dare to deviate from the normal and never again pervert the natural, they shall grow into the same conformed mediocrity as their immature parents. Children are not possessions. They are opportunities for greatness, if they are simply allowed to emanate the mighty power of creative integrity with which each baby is born. The delinquency of most parents through an anxious, insensitive, degrading stupidity interferes from the moment of birth with the spiritual progress of the victimized children. If a newborn babe could only speak, it might say something like this: "Dear Ma, dear Pa, please realize that I have none of your busybody business, other than for protection and nurturing until I am ready to do my own thing. So please tend to your own business after you change my diaper and feed me, that is. Do you understand, dear parents?" If parents don't understand that the same creative principle, intelligence power, which inheres the acorn, resides in the sperm and ovum, we shall continue to breed a race of spiritually stunted offspring. The inborn seed of integrity is of itself incorruptible, because it is the wholeness, the completeness, and the soundness of mind that all untampered with babies have at birth. The problem lies with the mother, in whose womb the unborn baby rests, and with the father who fertilized the integral seed. If one or both of the parents do not still possess the integrity that they were born with, they shall continue tampering and pervert the natural process of yet another child of the living universe. Civilizations will continue to rise and fall again and again with a mighty crash as long as parents and society continue to be delinquent in equitably protecting and suitably nurturing the child that has been placed in their charge. If the spark of integrity that we human beings are born with is not allowed free rein, our natural enthusiasm and our optimistic spirit shall be dampened down and in most cases completely extinguished. The conscience of all scrupulously good people is merely a mask of moral hypocrisy, because the moment they are confronted with anything or anyone that they consider immoral, these conscientious types become an unscrupulous vigilance committee which fiendishly inflict cruelties upon anyone they can subordinate to their iron wills. The cruelties are sometimes blatantly obvious when dealing with someone who is helpless, and other times cunningly subtle if the victim is in a position to retaliate. The so-called do-gooders who wear those long, suffering masks of piety are the hypocritical evildoers who conceal the inner lie of a sanctimonious, revengeful Jehovah, regardless of the sect to which they adamantly adhere. The common housefly and other types of pests adhere to the tackiness of fly paper, and anyone who is unyielding in their adherence to any of the world's tactless ideologies based on the false doctrine of dualism are as spiritually dead as the flies and other pests are literally dead. The problem, however, is that the collective mind of these dead-letter literal fundamentalists is a dank tomb overflowing with the corrupt thought forms enveloped in degenerate emotions. Their collective body is a musty shroud which barely conceals the inner decay. All environmental conditions which come under their ghoulish influence throughout the world is an unkempt cemetery full to overflowing with dead issues which pollute everything they touch. The unimaginative consistency and conformed mediocrity of this corrupt, degenerate, decadent body of hypocrites constitutes the out-of-order established order. They are the behavior-modifying, mind-mesmerizing, spirit-manipulating, and psyche-contaminating puppet masters who have the permission of the puppet masses to experiment upon, with the foolish consent of the victims themselves. Real peace of mind is, however, possible for any and all human beings who are willing to completely surrender even their willingness to a power other than themselves. This complete surrender is the letting go utterly of the ego, the self, the personality, and without exception every single idea, ideal, ideology, belief, concept, opinion, assumption, conclusion, and any other mental and material attachment that might be cherished by the ego self of personality. In other words, the requisite for real peace of mind is the total annihilation of the ego self of personality, along with the complete dissolution of every physical, mental, and spiritual thing or concept cherished by the normal emotional intellect of the ego self. In this empty state of not doing, letting go, surrender, an unsurpassable condition of mindfulness transpires at the same time, in such a way that the inner ear of the psyche and the single eye of the soul are cleansed of all dross. An ever-unfolding lucidity of thought and an ever-magnifying clarity of vision flows into the mental awareness of the new man and the new woman from the ever-altering consciousness of the cosmos. The psyche, which is the eros of sensuality, and the soul, which is the logos of spirituality, are bound fast in a holy, illuminating, mystical marriage in which the mind is fully enlightened. To put it simply, peace of mind takes place when love is penetrated by truth, at which time wisdom is conceived. The love spoken of here is the sacred feminine principle of infinite love. The truth spoken of here is the divine masculine principle of eternal truth. And the wisdom spoken of here is the consecrated universal wisdom of the ultimate androgyny. On the opening page of this chapter, the universal progenitor is spoken of as androgynous, and was referred to as the impersonal evolutionary primordial consciousness. It is that the higher self, as the dynamic, holistic, energetic progeny, which is the real self and permanent identity of the immortal spiritual body, that encapsulate the mortal physical body of each human being. All of the created phenomena is an expressed likeness emanating from whatever image is impressed upon the mind of the living universe. The spirit and nature of the living universe is an inherent substance manifested into a precise facsimile of a mental image appearing as a material likeness. The thought is a spiritual image, and the thing is a material likeness, in a perpetual interchange of energy and matter, wherein the thought is continuously renewed and the thing is constantly transformed. The mind of the androgynous progenitor is an everywhere present, invisible, invincible, imperative consciousness, which is an applicable energy that is susceptible to being converted into productive matter by way of an integral human being's optimistic thought enveloped in enthusiastic feelings, which then make an appearance from a creative image into a created likeness. This means that the human progeny of the living universe are able to create their own environmental conditions in their own image and likeness, which simply means as the human mind reasons, so must the human reality be. It is therefore true that the environmental conditions, whether they be desirable or undesirable, are an exact reflection of the conditioned mental environ contained in the mass mind sphere. It is only the integral woman and the integral men who are to be considered as the divine progeny, inasmuch as each in their turn have realigned their individual being with the consciousness of the androgynous progenitor. They are therefore motivated by the inner authority of this divine tutor and spirit patron, which is the solitary source of their individual genius. Genius is simply the reflection of a creative principal intelligence power which flows into the open mind and receptive heart from the everywhere present, all-permeating mind of the ordered universe. The lives of these divine progeny are therefore, of course, in a state of divine order, since they have disconnected from the deranged mass mind sphere to which the puppet masses are connected. The overwhelming human dilemma is the result of the input-output of the multiplicity of reactive, conditioned minds who are connected to and controlled by the mass mind sphere. With the mind of the individual an open channel to the mind of the living universe, the dead-letter human minds of the masses can no longer influence the integral person. The simple design and the solitary purpose of life is for the joy of expressing the love of existence, and all directives for being such an expression of joy must come from the inner authority, which is the source of life eternal. The Enlightenment experience reveals that there is an essential interconnectedness between the indivisible consciousness of the cosmos and the individual awareness of the person, and that this interconnectedness is by way of the all-pervading universal mind permeating the awakened human sensorium through the central nervous system and the whole brain. The full awakening of this higher self, however, can only be attained after the complete elimination of the ego self. Then the creative principle intelligence power of the universal mind continues to renew the particular mind, which constantly transforms the body of the integral person, who is opened up to the higher vibrations of love, wisdom, truth. Pure love is an outpouring of bliss consciousness from the root of knowing at the core of being. Pure love is not a human emotion that the immature fall into, but is a creative power that mature persons ascend into. Pure love and perfect truth are the consummate energies that flow through the feminine psyche, masculine soul interconnectedness. These purifying energies come from the universal mind of the infinite eternal cosmos, and not from the emotional intellect of the finite temporal personalities. Integral persons, however, are in tune with the infinite and at one with the eternal. Inasmuch as love has been penetrated by truth within their open minds and receptive hearts, whereby wisdom is conceived, these integral persons are each an enlightened issue who is coinciding at all points with the illuminating source. The interconnectedness between the solitary cosmic source and the singular human issue transpires when the individual I am awareness of the integral person is superimposed upon the indivisible I am consciousness of the entire cosmos. What has happened here is the whole brain of the person, the entire mind of the universe, and the complete consciousness of the cosmos are in a conscious, heartfelt coordination wherein the one implies the other in a reciprocation of complementary qualities. All of the antagonistic opposites behind the great and crucial human conflict disappear because the individual is no longer bound by the false doctrine of dualism. Inasmuch as they live, move, and preserve their true being within the universal consciousness of holism, these integral persons wear the consummate earth as a loose flowing outer robe for no other reason than they wear the culminating heaven as a form-fitting inner garment. In order to have a conscious, heartfelt contact with the universal progenitor, the head of the particular progeny must be empty of the ego self and all of its cherished opinions, in order to make room for the illuminating experience of simply being, consciousness, bliss. This requires the sublimation of the normal emotional intellect belonging to the ego self into the natural spiritual integrity of the higher self, which lights up the soul and makes life truly worthwhile. The impersonal source consciousness of the cosmos is the consciousness of cosmic life energy methodically pressing out into manifestation its creative ideals, not as an absentee creator, but as an everywhere apparent creative presence. The thoughts of this omnipresence are things of time moving through its boundless universal mind. Every existent phenomena, whether it is a growing tree, a walking person, a running horse, a flying bird, a swimming fish, an orbiting planet, or a newborn baby, no matter. All existent things are in reality equipoised spatial, temporal thoughts, flowing through an infinite eternal mind as manifest things. An ideal thought inheres each and everything, giving its form reality, making mind an inseparable, undifferentiated substance of matter. Before man expropriated his free will and disconnected from the natural spiritual rhythm of the benevolent omnipresence of the universal mind, environment was a habitant of peace, as the perfect repose of spirit moved with the perfect motion of nature. I thank you.